The first time my sister tried to humiliate me, she did it in our kitchen with nobody watching. This time, she rented a microphone. I pulled up to the venue 10 minutes late on purpose because arriving early to my family's events always meant free labor and fresh insults. The graduation party was at a bright, overpriced event hall with string lights draped like it was a wedding rehearsal. A balloon arch in my sister's school colors framed the entrance. Someone had paid extra for a photo wall that set her name in glitter. No readable words in my head, just the feeling of being invited to witness her victory. My son, Caleb, was in the back seat asking if there would be cake. There will be cake, I told him, voice steady like cake was the only thing waiting inside. I'd almost turned around twice on the drive. Not because I was scared of my sister, because I was tired of being the family's punching bag in a room full of people who didn't know the history and didn't care to. But my mom had called the night before, sweet as syrup. Just show up, she'd said. You're her sister. People will ask questions if you don't come. Questions. That was her favorite word. The implication that my absence would create a story she could control. So I came. I parked. I took a breath. I fixed my face. I walked in holding Caleb's hand. The room smelled like catered food and perfume. Laughter bounced off the walls. A slideshow played on a screen near the DJ booth. Photos of my sister in cap and gown. My mom in every frame like a proud sponsor. My dad clapping like he'd been personally redeemed by her diploma. And there she was, Kendra, center of gravity, shiny hair, perfect makeup, laughing loudly with a cluster of friends who looked like they'd never had to choose between groceries and gas. My mom spotted me first. Diane. Her eyes flicked down to Caleb like he was a flaw I'd brought in with me. Then she smiled anyway, the public version. There she is, she called out, loud enough to pull attention. Mara made it. Not Mara, not my daughter, not my sister. Just my name, like a label on a jar. Kendra turned, saw me, and her smile sharpened into something mean and delighted. Wow, she said, dragging the word like it tasted funny. You actually came. I didn't answer with emotion. I didn't give her a reaction to feed on. I just nodded once and guided Caleb toward the edge of the room. Go find the dessert table, I whispered to him. Stay where I can see you. He nodded and moved carefully, and small shoulders tight the way kids get when they sense adult energy turning sour. Kendra's friends watched him go. One of them whispered something and covered her mouth like a giggle was an accessory. My pulse stayed slow. My hand stayed calm. I trained myself for this the way you train yourself to drive on ice. No sudden movements, no dramatic turns, eyes forward. I found a spot near the side wall where I could see Caleb and the exits. My phone was in my coat pocket, camera ready without being obvious. Not because I wanted to start a fight, because I'd learned something the hard way. If my family hurts you in private, it becomes misunderstanding. If they hurt you in public, it becomes you're too sensitive, unless you have proof. The DJ lowered the music, a glass clinked. People drifted toward the center like they were being pulled by a magnet. Kendra stepped onto the little platform near the mic stand, cheeks flushed with attention. She took the mic from the DJ like it belonged to her. Okay, she laughed. I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming. Applause. My mom's hands clapped hardest. Kendra smiled, soaking it in, then tilted her head and scanned the room slowly. Her gaze landed on me and didn't move. And I want to thank my mom, she said, voice sweet, for doing everything, for always supporting me. More applause. My mom put a hand to her chest like she'd won an award. And my fiancé, Kendra added, turning toward the tall man near the head table, for believing in me and never judging me. That man, Elliot, stood up slightly, smiling politely. He looked out of place. Not in a bad way. Just like someone who walked into a family and hadn't realized the floor was rigged. He wore a simple suit, no flashy watch, no loud confidence. He smiled with his eyes, not his teeth. Kendra's smile widened. Then she turned back to the mic and let the room settle into that expectant hush. And finally, she said, laughing lightly, I want to thank my big sister for coming. A few heads turned toward me. My mom's eyes pinned me in place, like I should be grateful for the mention. Kendra continued, voice playful. Because honestly, it's not easy for her to show up. Light laughter rippled, the kind that can still be innocent if you stop. Kendra didn't stop. She's a single mom nobody wanted, she said into the microphone, laughing like it was a harmless joke. So it's nice she can borrow some attention tonight. The room laughed. Not everyone, but enough. Enough that it felt like the air changed. I stood perfectly still. I felt Caleb's absence like a physical ache, even though I could still see him near the dessert table, frozen mid-reach, eyes locked on me like he'd heard the words and didn't know what to do with them. Kendra looked at me and lifted her eyebrows, waiting. Waiting for me to cry. Waiting for me to storm out. Waiting for me to give her a scene she could frame as proof that I was unstable. I didn't move. I slid my phone from my pocket and started recording. Camera angled low, mic picking up everything without making me the center of the act. My hand didn't shake. My face didn't change. Kendra laughed again. I'm kidding, she said quickly. The classic cover that comes after the hit lands. You know I love you. More laughter, softer now, nervous. Then my mom, of course, decided to add her own knife. Diane stepped forward, taking the mic for a second like this was her stage, too. She's only here to use people, my mom said, smiling at the crowd. That's why she shows up. When there's food, when there are gifts, when she needs something. A few people laughed again, relieved they were allowed to. Kendra smiled wide, pleased. My father stared at the floor. I kept recording. Because there it was. My mother saying it clearly, publicly, into a microphone, in front of witnesses. Not a misunderstanding. Not a private comment. A statement. Kendra reached for the mic again, eyes glittering. Tell them about how she always... And that's when Elliot stood up. Not slowly, not politely. He stood like a decision had been made. He walked toward the platform, took the mic from Kendra's hand without asking, and turned to face the room. Kendra's smile faltered. My mom's face tightened instantly, offended that someone else had grabbed control. Elliot held the mic close, looked at the crowd, then looked at my mother. His voice was calm, but it carried. Everybody stopped laughing, he said. The room didn't just quiet, it froze. For a second, nobody moved. Even the DJ froze with his hand hovering over the laptop, like the music might be a crime if it kept playing. Elliot stood on the platform with the mic and looked around the room, slow, deliberate, until people stopped shifting in their seats and stopped smiling like this was entertainment. Put your phones down, he said, not shouted, just stated. Of course, half the room kept filming anyway, but the energy changed. The laughing dried up in the air like it realized it wasn't welcome anymore. Kendra took one step toward him, smiling too hard. Babe, she said, light and fake, you're being dramatic. Elliot didn't look at her. He looked at my mother. Diane, he said calm, you should be ashamed. My mother's smile flickered, just a tiny crack, then reset. Excuse me? Elliot finally turned his head toward Kendra. I'm not doing this to embarrass you, he said. You already did that. I'm doing this because you used your sister as a punchline in front of her kid. Caleb had drifted closer without me noticing. He was standing near the dessert table, holding a plate with one cookie on it like he'd forgotten why he came. His eyes kept darting between me and the platform. I kept my voice low. Stay right there, I murmured to him without looking away from Elliot. Elliot lifted the mic again. Most of you don't know Mara, he said. You know the story you've been given. The one where she's a single mom nobody wanted and she uses people. He paused, letting the words settle with their ugliness. Here's what I know, he continued, voice steady. Mara works 2 jobs. She raises her son without help from the people who should have helped. And she's been paying for things in this family that were never hers to pay for. Kendra laughed nervously, trying to turn it into a joke again. Oh my God. He's doing a speech. Elliot turned his eyes to her finally, and there was no softness in them. Yes, he said. I am. My mother stepped forward, still trying to control the room. Elliot, sweetie, she said, this is not appropriate. It's extremely appropriate, he replied, and his tone didn't change. Because the truth is the only thing that's appropriate right now. He nodded at the DJ. Can you pull up the receipt folder I emailed you? He asked. The DJ blinked like he didn't want to be involved in anything that might end up on the internet. But Elliot's tone wasn't a request anymore. It was a command dressed in calm. The DJ clicked twice, opened a file, and turned the projector toward the screen. A bright rectangle filled the wall behind the platform. A document, blurred enough that you couldn't read small print, but clear enough to recognize the layout of a payment receipt. Big, bold lines, dates, amounts, and the kind of formatting that looks official even from 10 feet away. Elliot pointed at it with one finger. This venue deposit, he said, was paid with a card in Mara's name. A ripple moved through the room. Not laughter, murmuring. My mother's face went tight. That's... Elliot lifted a hand slightly. Hold on, he said. That's just the beginning. He nodded again. The DJ clicked to the next page. Another receipt, another transaction, then another. Catering, Elliot said. Paid with a card in Mara's name. He looked at my sister. Decor, he added. Paid with a card in Mara's name. Kendra's mouth opened, then closed. She glanced at my mother, who was suddenly very still. I didn't move. I kept recording from my spot near the wall, phone angled low. My face stayed calm, but my stomach felt like it was being pulled tight by a string. Because I wasn't surprised that my family would use me. And I was surprised Elliot had proof ready to throw on a screen. Elliot continued like he was reading a report. And before anyone says, Mara offered, let me show you why that doesn't fit. He nodded again. The DJ clicked, and a different document appeared, again blurred in the details, but the layout looked like a credit report summary. Lines, boxes, a list format that screamed accounts. Elliot's voice stayed level. When I ran a standard background check for our mortgage pre-approval, he said, and looked directly at Kendra, I found accounts that weren't supposed to exist. Kendra's smile twitched. You did what? Elliot didn't flinch. I found 2 credit lines opened under Mara's identity, he said, using Diane's home address and Diane's phone number. The room went completely silent in a way that made my ears ring. My mother made a small sound, half laugh, half gasp, like she couldn't decide whether to deny or attack. That's insane, she snapped. You're accusing me. Elliot held up his own phone. I'm not accusing you, he said. I'm stating what's in the records. Then he turned the mic slightly away from his mouth and spoke, lower, to the DJ. Play the voicemail, he said. Kendra's head snapped up. What voicemail? Elliot's eyes didn't leave her. The one your mom left Mara, he said, from last week. The one you didn't think I had. My chest tightened. I hadn't told Elliot everything. I barely knew him. But I did remember last week. My mother calling me late, syrupy, asking for my social security number for paperwork, and then getting sharp when I refused. The DJ's laptop speakers crackled. Then my mother's voice came through the system, loud and clear, filling the entire hall. Mara, Diane's voice said, tight and irritated, stop being difficult. If you don't give me what I need, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you are. And don't forget, you still owe this family. A few people inhaled sharply. Someone near the back whispered, Oh my God. My mother's face drained of color so fast it looked unreal. That's not, she started. Elliot cut her off, still calm. It's your voice, yeah, he said. And I have the original file with the timestamp. Kendra stepped forward, reaching for the mic like she could physically erase the moment. Turn that off. Elliot moved the mic away from her reach without aggression, just control. Don't touch me, he said quietly. Kendra froze like she'd never been told no. My mother's eyes flared with panic. And she swung to a fence like it was her only weapon left. This is private, she snapped at Elliot. You have no right to play that. You're humiliating my daughter. Elliot's gaze stayed steady. No, he said. You humiliated Mara in front of her child, and you did it because you thought she'd sit there and take it. He looked out at the crowd again. Here's what's true, he said. Mara isn't here to use anybody. She's been used. And the worst part, you all laughed like it was normal. The room stayed frozen. People avoided my eyes. A woman near the gift table set a bag down like it suddenly weighed too much. Kendra's voice cracked. This is supposed to be my night. Elliot nodded once. It was, he said, until you used it to hurt someone who didn't deserve it. He turned toward me then, really looked at me for the first time. I'm sorry, he said, and it didn't sound performative. It sounded like a man realizing he'd been standing in a house with a rotten foundation. I didn't answer. I just kept recording. Because my family had spent years making me feel crazy for noticing patterns. And now the pattern was on a wall in front of witnesses. My mother's voice rose, sharp and trembling. You're not ruining my daughter's future over some paperwork confusion. Elliot's face didn't change. Identity theft isn't confusion, he said. And neither is fraud. Kendra's eyes widened. Fraud? What are you talking about? Elliot's voice stayed even. The deposits for this party, he said. The card in Mara's name. The accounts opened under her identity. The address tied to your mother's house. If you didn't know, you should be angry at the person who did it. And if you did know, he paused for half a breath. Then you should be afraid. My mother lunged forward with a smile that didn't fit her eyes. Elliot, honey, she said, trying to lower her voice. Let's talk privately. You don't understand our family dynamics. Elliot took one step back. I understand enough, he said. Then he did something that made my stomach drop. He lifted his phone, looked down at it, and said into it quietly, Yes, we're ready. Kendra blinked. Who are you calling? Elliot looked at her, calm as a locked door. My attorney, he said, and the police. My mother's face went hard and bright with rage. You wouldn't dare. Elliot's gaze didn't move. I already did, he said, because Mara isn't leaving here as your family joke. And in the sudden silence, we heard a sound from the hallway outside the event room, distinct, unmistakable, and moving closer. Radios, boot steps. Then the door opened and two uniformed officers stepped inside. Part 3/5. The officers didn't stride in like a TV raid. They stepped through the door like they already knew what they were walking into. Hands visible, eyes scanning, posture calm but ready. One of them, a woman with her hair pulled tight under her cap, stopped just inside the threshold and let her gaze sweep the room. The balloon arch, the head table, the projector screen still glowing with blurred receipts, the crowd standing too still like mannequins caught mid-laugh. The other officer, taller, older, moved to Elliot first. Sir, he said, voice low, you called. Elliot held his hands up in a non-threatening way. Yes, he replied. There's evidence of identity theft and financial fraud. The victim is here. The female officer's eyes flicked on me. Ma'am, she said, are you Mara Reed? I didn't rush. I didn't tremble. I nodded once. Yes. My sister's voice cut through the air, brittle and sharp. This is ridiculous. This is a graduation party. The female officer didn't even look at her. She looked at me again. Do you feel safe right now? I glanced at Caleb, still near the dessert table, frozen like he didn't know whether to breathe. My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed controlled. My son is here, I said. I want him away from this. The officer nodded immediately, like that was the most reasonable thing anyone had said all night. Do you have someone you trust to take him home? She asked. Elliot answered before I could. My sister is outside, he said. She drove separately. She can take him. Kendra snapped, no, why is his sister even here? Elliot turned his head, calm and flat. Because I planned for this, he said. That sentence hit my chest like a weight dropping into place. Planned, not reacted, not got emotional, planned. The male officer lifted a hand to quiet the room. All right, he said. Everybody stay where you are. Nobody leaves until we figure out what's going on. The crowd shifted, nervous now. A few people took a step back from my mother like they were realizing she wasn't just funny. My mother stepped forward with her public smile already assembled. Officer, she said warmly, this is a misunderstanding. We're a family. Emotions are running high. My daughter's fiancé is overstepping. The male officer held up one finger without looking at her. Ma'am, he said, I didn't ask for commentary. I asked for cooperation. My mother's smile twitched. Kendra tried again, louder, aiming at the room like she could recruit witnesses by force. Mara is always like this, she said, pointing at me. She records people. She twists things. Elliot cut her off. She's recording because you humiliated her, he said, and because your mom used her name to pay for this party. That made a few heads turn sharply toward my mother. The female officer stepped closer to me. Mara, she said quietly, I'm Officer Ramos. Can you step with me to the side? I nodded and moved, still keeping Caleb in my line of sight. Officer Ramos guided me to a quieter corner near the hallway leading to the restrooms. The male officer, Officer Caldwell, remained near the platform with Elliot, keeping the room contained. Ramos lowered her voice. Tell me what happened tonight. I didn't give her feelings. I gave her facts. My sister took the mic and publicly humiliated me, I said. My mother added to it. Elliot pulled up receipts showing this party deposit, catering, and decorations were paid with my card. I did not authorize that. Ramos's eyes sharpened. Your card, she repeated. Yes, I said. In my name. And you didn't give anyone permission, she asked. No, I replied. And there's more? He said there are credit lines opened under my identity with my mother's address and phone number. Ramos nodded slowly, then asked, Do you have access to your credit report? I can pull it up, I said. Do it, she replied. My hands didn't shake as I opened my banking app and my credit monitoring. The signal in the hall was fine, strong, stable, clear. Like the universe was finally cooperating with documentation. I scrolled. 2 unfamiliar accounts stared back at me like strangers wearing my name. Opened months ago. Balances that made my stomach clench. And on one of them, a listed contact number I recognized the way you recognize a voice you grew up fearing, my mother's. Ramos leaned in just enough to see the outline without reading every line. All right, she said. That's enough for now. I felt my throat tighten. I didn't know, I said quietly. I've been struggling to keep up, and I thought it was just life. Ramos didn't pity me. She did what good officers do. She anchored me back in procedure. We need to confirm identity, she said. Do you have ID? I handed her my license. Then she asked, Do you have the receipts Elliot displayed? Not personally, I said. He has them. Ramos nodded. We'll get them, and we'll ask for the original voicemail file. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, even though she was 30 feet away. Stop making a scene. You're embarrassing everyone. I stared at it for a second, then angled it toward Ramos. She read it, expression tightening. Keep that, she said. Don't respond. I took a screenshot and saved it to a folder because my life had taught me something simple. People who weaponize shame hate screenshots. Ramos and I walked back toward the main room. Caleb was still there, small, too quiet. Elliot's sister, a woman with a kind face and a stiff posture, like she wanted to fight the whole room, had slipped in through the side door. Elliot spotted her and pointed gently toward Caleb. She walked over, crouched, and spoke softly to him. Caleb glanced at me once, eyes wet but controlled, then nodded and let her guide him away. My throat tightened hard as he disappeared through the hall. I didn't wave. I didn't call after him. I just watched him leave safely. Then I turned back to the center of the storm. Officer Caldwell was at the platform now, speaking to Elliot in a low voice. Elliot handed him a folder. Thick, organized, clean. Not a pile of random screenshots, a prepared packet. My sister noticed and hissed, "What is that?" Elliot didn't look at her. "The evidence," he said. My mother moved quickly toward Caldwell, smile back on, voice soft like she was trying to charm a lock open. "Officer," she said, "my daughter Mara is financially irresponsible. She forgets what she agrees to. She's always asking for help. I have messages." Caldwell finally turned his head and looked at her directly. "Ma'am," he said, "step back." My mother's eyes widened like he'd slapped her. "Excuse me?" "Step back," he repeated, firmer. "You're not going to crowd my interview." Kendra stepped in beside my mother like a backup singer. "Mara offered to help," she insisted. "She always offers, and then she plays victim." Elliot's voice stayed calm. "Then you won't mind seeing the authorization," he said. Kendra blinked. "What authorization?" Elliot nodded toward the projector screen. "The vendor doesn't accept 'she offered.' They accept a signature, a verification code, an email trail." Caldwell held up the folder. "Sir," he said to Elliot, "walk me through this." Elliot opened it like he'd rehearsed. "This is the payment trail," he said. "Venue deposit, catering, decor. I'm charged to Mara's card. The merchant receipts show the billing address used." He flipped a page and pointed. "The billing address is Diane Weston's home address." My mother's face tightened. "That's because Mara used my address," she snapped. "She's unstable. She moves around." Elliot didn't even blink. "Then explain why the verification text went to your phone number," he said. The room snapped quieter. Caldwell's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Verification texts," he repeated. Elliot nodded and handed him another page. "I asked the vendor for their payment verification log," he said. "They sent the last 4 digits of the number that approved the charges." My mother's lips parted. Because she knew? Because she'd forgotten that institutions log everything. Kendra's voice came out thin. "That could be any number." Elliot's eyes went to her. Cold now. "It's your mom's number," he said. "The one she used to threaten Mara last week." Caldwell turned to Ramos. "You got the victim ID'd." Ramos nodded. "Confirmed." Caldwell looked back at Elliot. "And the voicemail," he said. Elliot pulled up his phone and tapped once. "Original file," he said. "Not a screen recording, full metadata." Caldwell gestured. "Play it." Elliot played it again, short, brutal, undeniable. My mother's voice, sharp with entitlement. Threats? Pressure? The line about owing the family. When it ended, the room stayed silent in a new way. Not shock, realization. Caldwell looked at my mother. "Ma'am," he said, "do you understand you may have committed identity theft?" My mother's voice rose immediately, defensive. "This is insane. I'm her mother. I've helped her for years. She can't manage money." Ramos stepped forward beside Caldwell. "Ma'am," she said, "helping someone doesn't give you permission to open credit in their name." Kendra's voice cracked. "You're doing this at my graduation party." Elliot turned toward her. "You did this at your graduation party," he said. "You just thought you could do it without consequences." My father finally spoke from the head table, voice low and weak. "Diane," he murmured. "Stop." My mother whipped her head toward him like she couldn't believe he'd betrayed her in public. "Don't you start," she hissed. Caldwell held up a hand. "All right," he said. "Here's what's happening. We're taking a report tonight. We're collecting evidence and we're separating parties." He looked at me. "Mara, do you want to pursue charges?" "Yes," I said. One word. Clean, final. My mother's face twisted. "After everything I've done," Ramos cut in, calm and sharp. "Ma'am," she said, "stop talking." Caldwell turned to my mother. I need your ID, he said. And I need your phone. My mother's smile tried to reappear. My phone? Why would you need? Because if verification codes went to your device and you sent threats and you handled payments, Caldwell said, your phone contains evidence. Kendra stepped closer instantly, protective. You can't take her phone. Caldwell's tone stayed flat. I can request it, he said. And if she refuses, I can apply for a warrant based on what we already have. My mother stared at him like she was deciding whether to gamble. Then she did what she always does when cornered. She tried to flip the narrative onto me. She's lying, Diane snapped, pointing at me. She's always lied. She's a single mother because she can't keep a man. She can't keep a job. The words hit the room like a slap. And this time, nobody laughed. Because the officers were watching her now. Not as a mother, as a suspect. Ramos's gaze hardened. One more outburst, she said quietly, and you'll be escorted out. My mother's chest rose and fell fast. Her fingers tightened around her clutch. Caldwell repeated, your phone, now. My mother's eyes flicked to Kendra. Kendra's eyes flicked to Elliot. And Elliot, still holding the mic in his hand like the only thing keeping the room honest, said something that made my stomach drop into a cold, steady certainty. Officer, he said, she can't hand it to you because she already tried to delete it. Caldwell's face tightened. Delete what? Elliot looked at my mother without blinking. Yash, the proof, he said. And I have the screen recording of her doing it because I saw her start when you walked in. My mother's face went blank. Not angry, blank. Like the mask had finally fallen off and she didn't know what to replace it with. Part 4/5. The room didn't breathe. Not after Elliot said it. Not after my mother's face went blank like a screen that had just gone dark. Officer Caldwell's posture shifted. One small change in stance that meant he'd stopped treating this like family conflict and started treating it like evidence preservation. Sir, he said to Elliot, tell me exactly what you saw. Elliot didn't dramatize it. He spoke the way you speak when you've already written it down. When the officers entered, Diane picked up her phone. He said, she opened messages. Then she went to her call log. And then she opened a folder and started tapping fast, deleting. I saw her thumb movements. I saw the recently deleted screen flash, so I recorded from my seat. Caldwell's eyes cut to my mother. Ma'am, he said, hand me the phone, now. My mother's voice came out too sharp, too fast. This is harassment, she snapped. You can't just take a woman's phone at a party. Officer Ramos stepped in, calm but solid. Ma'am, she said, we are investigating a felony complaint. You are being asked to preserve potential evidence. Hand it over. Kendra's face had twisted into a kind of frantic anger that didn't know where to land. You're ruining everything, she hissed at me. Like I dragged the police in myself, and not the fact that she'd been laughing into a microphone 5 minutes earlier. I didn't answer her. I kept my eyes on Caldwell and my mother's hands, because hands tell the truth when mouths lie. My mother clutched her phone like it was a life raft. Her nails dug into the case. She looked around the room, scanning for someone, anyone, who would save her by becoming loud enough to confuse the situation. But there was no laughter to hide behind now. There were only witnesses, and the projector screen still glowing behind her like a silent jury. Caldwell held out his hand again. Last time, he said, your phone. My mother's smile tried to reappear, thin and desperate. Officer, I'm her mother. I pay for everything. She's unstable. She forgets. Hand it over, Caldwell repeated, flat. Kendra stepped forward like she was going to block them physically. Elliot's voice cut through, calm as a locked door. Kendra, he said, stop. She whipped her head toward him. Don't tell me to stop. Elliot didn't raise his voice. He didn't move closer. He didn't try to dominate her. He just said the thing that made her freeze. If you touch an officer, he said, you will spend your graduation night in the back of a patrol car. Kendra stared at him like she'd never heard consequences spoken out loud before. My father finally stood from the head table, hands half lifted in a helpless gesture. Diane, he murmured, give it to them. My mother snapped her head toward him. Don't you dare, she hissed, venom low enough that most people couldn't hear it. But I could, because I'd heard that tone my entire life. Caldwell stepped in closer, just enough to make it clear this was not negotiable. My mother's shoulders rose, and she inhaled like she was about to launch into a performance. Then she did the one thing she thought would change the power dynamic. She shoved the phone toward Kendra. Here, she snapped. Hold it. Ramos moved fast, not aggressive, efficient. Her hand came up and intercepted the pass. No, she said, taking the phone cleanly from the air before it reached Kendra's fingers. Evidence doesn't get handed off. My mother's eyes widened with the kind of panic that doesn't look like fear. It looks like rage that a plan failed. Ramos slipped the phone into a small gray evidence pouch and sealed it. Then she placed it into a larger bag, lined, stiff, the kind meant to block signals. A Faraday bag. That detail mattered more than anything my mother was saying. And because it told me the officers believed there was something on that phone worth protecting from deletion. Caldwell looked at Elliot. You said you recorded her deleting, he said. Elliot held out his own phone without hesitation. Here, he replied. Original video. Caldwell didn't take it like a souvenir. He took it like a chain in a chain of custody. He nodded at Ramos. Let's step out, Caldwell said. We're going to do this away from the crowd. Kendra snapped, No, this is my party. Caldwell turned his head toward her, and his voice dropped into something that shut the room down. Ma'am, he said, your party ended when we got called for fraud. Stand back. The crowd parted instinctively as Caldwell and Ramos moved toward the hallway with Elliot and me. People who had laughed 5 minutes earlier suddenly couldn't make eye contact. A woman near the gift table stared at her own hands like she could scrub herself clean of the moment. I followed the officers into the hallway, my breathing steady, my phone still recording, now tucked against my side with the camera angled down. Because even in a hallway, my mother could still try to create a story. Behind us, I heard my mother's voice rise. She's manipulating him, Diane shouted, loud enough to reach the hall. She seduced him for money. She always uses men. Elliot didn't turn around. He kept walking. And that restraint told me more about him than any speech could. In the hallway, Caldwell stopped near a side alcove by the restrooms, where the noise from the party dulled into a hum. He nodded at Ramos. Ramos pulled out a small notepad. All right, she said to me. Mara, statement. Start with your relationship to Diane Weston. My mother, I said. And Kendra. My younger sister. Ramos nodded. Do you have access to your bank statements showing these charges? Yes, I said. I opened my banking app with calm fingers and pulled up the most recent transactions. There it was. Venue deposit, catering, decor, merchant names that matched what Elliot had shown. Ramos didn't take my phone. She didn't need to. She leaned close enough to confirm the pattern without reading numbers aloud. Do you recognize these merchants? You don't, she asked. Only because I'm looking at them now, I said. I didn't authorize them. Caldwell's attention stayed fixed on procedure. Did you ever give your mother your card information? He asked. I didn't guess. I told the truth. She had access years ago when I was younger, I said. When she helped me set up bills. I changed cards since then. But she still has my personal information. Ramos's eyes narrowed slightly. Social security number, she said. Yes, I replied. Elliot didn't speak until Caldwell looked at him. Your background check, Caldwell said. Tell me again how you found the extra accounts. Elliot's voice stayed level. Mortgage pre-approval required a credit pull, he said. I saw open lines under Mara's name that didn't match her disclosure. I asked her if she recognized them. She didn't. Then I requested a more detailed report and cross-referenced the associated address and phone. And it matched Diane's, Caldwell said. Yes, Elliot replied. Caldwell nodded once, then turned his gaze to the sealed Faraday bag. If her phone has verification codes, messages, or banking access, he said, we're going to preserve it and request a warrant if needed. My stomach tightened. What happens tonight? I asked. Caldwell looked at me. Tonight you get a report number, he said. Tonight we document probable cause. Tomorrow you file an identity theft affidavit and freeze your credit, and we will refer this to financial crimes. My mother's voice suddenly filled the hallway again as she stormed toward us. This is unbelievable, she snapped. You're treating me like a criminal in front of my daughter's friends. Ramos stepped forward immediately. Ma'am, she said, stop right there. My mother stopped, but only because a uniformed officer told her to, not because she respected boundaries. Caldwell kept his voice flat. You're being investigated, he said. Do not approach the victim. I'm her mother, Diane shot back. She's not a victim. She's irresponsible. Ma'am, Caldwell said, any further attempts to intimidate or interfere will be added to the report. My mother's eyes flicked to me and her voice lowered into something that was meant only for me. You think this is going to help you, she said. You think people will love you now. I didn't respond. I didn't blink. I simply lifted my phone slightly, not like a weapon, like a mirror. And my mother saw it. Her eyes darted to the lens and her mouth tightened. She stepped back half a step, suddenly aware she couldn't rewrite what was being captured. Kendra appeared behind her, face flushed, mascara perfect, rage barely contained. You did this, she said to me, voice shaking. You couldn't just let me have one night. I looked at her calmly. You took the mic, I said. Not me. Kendra's jaw clenched. You're always the victim. Caldwell turned his head toward her. Ma'am, he said, stop speaking to her. Kendra stared at him like he'd insulted her. Then she snapped her eyes back to Elliot and hissed, You're really choosing her over me. Elliot's face didn't change. I'm choosing the truth, he said. And I'm choosing to not marry into fraud. That hit Kendra like a physical blow. My mother's eyes widened. Elliot, don't be dramatic. Elliot cut her off without raising his voice. Diane, he said, I asked you once privately to explain the accounts. You lied. Then you threatened Mara in a voicemail. Then you approved charges using her card. And tonight you tried to delete evidence in front of officers. He paused for half a beat. I'm done, he said. Kendra's voice cracked. You can't just... I can, Elliot replied. And I am. Ramos watched the exchange, then looked at Caldwell. Caldwell nodded slightly like a silent agreement had been reached. Caldwell turned to my mother. Ma'am, he said, I need you to understand something. Attempts to destroy evidence can elevate charges. Attempts to intimidate a victim can elevate charges. If you continue, you are increasing your exposure. My mother's face tightened. Exposure, she repeated, like she couldn't believe the word applied to her. Then Caldwell said, We're going to ask you to come to the station tonight for an interview. My mother's laugh came out sharp and brittle. Absolutely not. Caldwell's eyes stayed steady. That's your choice, he said, but your phone is now being preserved. And based on what we've seen... He paused and glanced down at the sealed bag again. I suspect it's not just Mara's identity you've been using. My stomach dropped. Because if that was true, then this wasn't a mean family habit. It was a pattern. And Caldwell's tone told me he was about to confirm it. Caldwell didn't say it to scare her. He said it because he'd seen enough fraud cases to recognize the smell of one. I suspect it's not just Mara's identity you've been using, he repeated, looking directly at my mother. Diane's eyes flashed. That's absurd, she snapped. I'm a mother. I've taken care of this family for years. Ramos didn't argue. She asked one question, quiet and precise. Then why did the verification codes go to your phone? She said. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. Kendra stepped forward, Ach's voice cracking with panic now. This is getting out of hand. Elliot's gaze stayed steady. It already was, he said. You just didn't mind when it was Mara. Caldwell turned to me. Mara, he said, I'm going to ask you again on the record. Do you want to pursue charges? Yes, I said. No speech, no performance, just yes. Ramos wrote it down, her pen moving like the decision had weight. Caldwell nodded. All right, he said. Here's what happens next. He spoke like he was laying out steps on a form. Tonight, we take your statement and Elliot's statement, he said. We document the projector evidence and the voicemail. We collect your bank transaction list. We preserve Diane's phone. Then we submit for a warrant to extract the device data related to payment authorizations, deleted messages, and any account access. My mother scoffed. Ox, you can't get a warrant for a phone because of party drama. Caldwell's face didn't change. This isn't party drama, he said. This is alleged identity theft and evidence tampering. Ramos added, and harassment. We heard the voicemail. We saw the text message. We observed intimidation. My mother's chest rose and fell fast. She was trying to find the right angle to flip this back into my fault. So she tried the oldest one. You're doing this because you're jealous, she spat at me. You're bitter. You can't stand that your sister is happy and you're... Stop, Ramos said sharply. My mother blinked at her, stunned that an officer would speak to her like that. Ramos's voice stayed cold. Do not speak to the victim, she said. Not another word. Kendra's face twisted, tears starting to gather. Real now, or maybe just panic wearing tears. Ah, you're ruining my life, she whispered to Elliot. Elliot exhaled slowly. No, he said. Your mom did. And if you knew, you helped. Kendra shook her head hard. I didn't know. Elliot looked at her for a long second, then said something that made the hallway go even quieter. Yeah. Then you should be furious, he said, because she used your graduation as cover. Kendra's eyes darted toward my mother. For the first time all night, her anger shifted direction. Mom, she whispered, voice small, what did you do? Diane's lips tightened. Don't you start, she hissed back. Caldwell watched that exchange like it was another data point. Then he said, Ma'am, you're free to refuse an interview tonight, but you're not free to interfere. If you attempt to contact Mara, if you attempt to retaliate, or if you attempt to destroy evidence, you will be arrested. My mother's eyes widened. Arrested, she repeated, like the concept offended her. Yes, Caldwell said flat. Arrested. A beat of silence. Then my mother's voice dropped low. Venom meant only for me. You think he's saving you? She hissed. He'll leave too. Elliot stepped forward, not toward her, toward me, and that movement alone changed the power in the hall. He didn't touch me. He didn't perform a protective boyfriend act. He simply positioned himself so my mother couldn't get near me. And then he looked at Caldwell. Officer, he said, I want to give a formal statement now. Caldwell nodded. Good, he said. We'll do it at the station. My mother laughed again, thin, desperate. You're going to the station over this? Ramos answered without looking at her. Yes. Caldwell turned to me. Do you need a ride? He asked. I shook my head. I have my car, I said. Then my throat tightened. But my son... Elliot spoke gently. My sister took him home, he said. He's safe. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. My body had been holding its breath since Kendra took the mic. Now it let go, just a little. We walked out of the venue through a side exit so nobody could turn it into a spectacle. The parking lot lights buzzed overhead. My breath came out in a white puff in the cool night air. Caldwell and Ramos guided my mother and sister separately. Not in cuffs, not yet. In control. At the station, I gave my statement the way I'd learned to live. Clear, chronological, no emotion offered as a substitute for proof. I provided my ID, my bank transactions, my screenshots, and the text my mother sent while she stood in the same room pretending to be a loving parent. Elliot provided his packet, his recorded clip of my mother deleting, and the original voicemail file with metadata. Caldwell printed the report and slid it toward me. Case number, he said, keep it. Then he handed me a second sheet. This is information for an emergency credit freeze, he said. Do it tonight. I nodded once. I will. Ramos looked at me. If she contacts you, she said, call us. We'll add it. Don't respond. I didn't have to be told twice. The next 2 weeks moved faster than my family ever wanted. The warrant came back. The forensic extraction pulled deleted messages, verification texts, and payment approvals tied to my mother's device. The financial crimes unit traced the disputed accounts. And the paper trail didn't just lead to Diane's address, it led to her fingerprints, digital and literal, over everything. She wasn't helping. She was operating. The prosecutor filed charges: identity theft, credit card fraud, and attempted evidence tampering. A no-contact order was issued immediately because threatening voicemails and intimidation in front of officers doesn't age well in a judge's hands. My mother tried to cry in court. The judge didn't care. My sister showed up for her own appointment because once the accounts were exposed, the bank realized something else. Kendra's tuition balance had been paid with funds that did not belong to Kendra. The school opened an internal review. Sponsors got nervous. Photos from the party disappeared from social media like they'd never happened. But my recordings didn't disappear. Neither did the report. Elliot ended the engagement quietly without a scene. He didn't post, he didn't rant. He just returned the ring and left. The only message he sent me afterward was one line: "You weren't crazy." They were loud. I read it once, saved it, and didn't reply. Not because I didn't appreciate it, because the most powerful thing I'd learned was this: I didn't need rescuing. I needed the truth to be witnessed. A month later, my credit was repaired, the fraudulent accounts were flagged, and my bank reversed the party charges after the forensic report confirmed unauthorized approvals. My mother was ordered to pay restitution. She received probation with strict conditions and a suspended sentence that would turn into jail time if she violated the no-contact order or failed restitution. And the court issued a formal protective order that kept her away from me and my son. As for my sister, the humiliation she handed me came back in a shape she couldn't laugh off. People stopped clapping when she entered rooms. Friends stopped returning texts. Her perfect night became the night everyone remembered for a different reason. Not because I made a scene. Because someone finally stopped the laughter. Weeks later, I took Caleb to a small diner for pancakes on a Sunday morning. He poured syrup carefully, tongue pressed to his lip in concentration, and then he looked up at me and said, "Mom, you didn't cry." I swallowed hard and kept my voice gentle. "I wanted to," I admitted, "but I needed to keep you safe." He nodded like he understood more than he should. And in that moment, I realized the real win wasn't watching my mother get punished or my sister lose face. The real win was my son learning that you can be attacked in public and still walk out with your dignity intact. If you were in my place, would you have walked out the moment they took the mic or stayed and let the truth bury them in front of everyone? Tell me what you would have done in the comments. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.